The Green Party made history choosing the human rights lawyer Annamie Paul as its new leader. Paul is the first black woman to lead a federal political party, the second Jewish person. Remember, David Lewis, of course, led the NDP. What direction does she plan to take the party in? And what's her plan to secure a seat in the House of Commons? And most importantly, in less than an hour, the Green Party will decide whether or not to support the Liberals' speech from the throne. She said, we're not in. Let's find out more. We are joined now by Annamie Paul from Ottawa. First of all, congratulations. That's an historic win and a wonderful win. And I want to get to that, but boy, you don't waste any time. The House is voting on the speech from the throne, and you've already said you won't support it. Let's start where the rubber hits the road. Why not?
There are things in it that are simply non-negotiable for us. First, we needed to hear something about a guaranteed livable income. There are a lot of people still falling through the cracks, and this is the time to plan for the system we're going to have in place when we're able to talk about a recovery period. Secondly, my family and many families have lost people in long-term care completely unnecessarily because of the problems with the system. We didn't hear any plan to deal with that on an urgent basis or a call for a national inquiry. And then, we are not meeting our international obligations on the climate emergency. We need a 60% target by 2030 to reduce our emissions below 2005 levels. We didn't hear anything about that at all, and that's just a red line for the Green Party.
Okay, that is something that Elizabeth May had talked about. I just want to go back. Part of this is our first interview on Power Play together. But you did mention it affected your family, this pandemic, in a profound way. You lost your father at a long-term care home. First of all, I'm very sorry for your loss. It's a very painful time and a lonely time. Can you just tell people how that illustrated how the kind of shortcomings that you're now talking about that has affected real people, that has impacted the decision on the speech from the throne?
Absolutely. When you put profits into anything, then people are tempted to cut corners. And when you cut corners in healthcare, that's just deadly. And so for a long time, long-term healthcare facilities have relied on family members to pick up the slack of the unfortunately under-resourced and underpaid workers in those facilities. When we didn't have access to our loved ones, then those loved ones died. And in Canada, dying of things like malnutrition, dehydration, and preventable infections because of that lack of access is absolutely a scandal. We should have an inquiry about it, and we should be talking about how we are going to fix that broken system as soon as possible.
Right. It's provincial responsibility, as you well know, but the federal government has already played a role in that. Elizabeth May led the party for a long time. In some ways, she defined it. It's a totally different time now. What does the Green Party under your leadership look like? How will it be different?
Well, the pandemic has changed us all. One thing that it's done in terms of the Green Party is allowed Canadians to see exactly how important our social policies have been. So for a very long time, we've been talking about things like long-term care health reform, about a guaranteed livable income, about universal pharmacare. When I ran in the 2019 election, I heard crickets from the other parties during debates. And so people in Canada, I believe, are seeing that we have our commitment to the climate emergency, but we're also really committed to social policy, and we're offering the best ideas.
You and I spoke after you won, and you told me you were surprised at the level of racism and anti-Semitism that you faced. It's not like that's unexpected in this world, but even you told me you were surprised at the level of it. Tell me why. What happened?
Well, you just don't imagine it to be so flagrant, so persistent. And I think that there's the perception that these sorts of attitude only live in the dark places of the internet, for instance, or social media. But I continue to be really taken aback at how absolutely unafraid people are to express these views in public fora. And so I tell everybody, and I'll continue to tell everybody, that if we want to erase this and stamp this out, everyone needs to speak up, because it's really the silence that is emboldening this kind of hate.
You're going to meet, obviously, with Justin Trudeau, and In the last campaign, pictures of him in blackface emerged. We are now in the midst of a long, very global conversation about systemic racism and Black Lives Matter. He's apologized for that. Will you talk to him about that? Do you give him a pass on the issue since his apology?
Well, we have we're speaking in 15 minutes, in fact, and what I want to talk to him about are these incredibly urgent needs related to the pandemic that I just didn't hear much of anything about in the speech from the throne. I want to hear a little bit more or share some of the ideas we have on how we can build a better future. I think it's a real credit to people in Canada that they accepted that apology. It wasn't one that they had to accept. People of color and Black people did not have to accept that apology. But we were focused on trying to be positive, trying to educate, so I give us credit for that.
Interesting. Okay. You're speaking to Justin Trudeau in 15 minutes. You're running in Toronto Centre in the by-election where the former Finance Minister Bill Morneau, after he resigned, multiple parties have named their candidates. You ran there before and you lost. Now, the former leader, Elizabeth May, is asking the NDP to practice the leader's courtesy of not running a candidate. That usually doesn't happen for a new MP. Are you asking the NDP or other parties not to run against you?
No, I have not asked for that and have no expectation of that. As I understand, there is a full slate of candidates. There is no courtesy of that kind that is going to be forthcoming. And so, I'm just looking to break another barrier. I mean, what do you think, Evan? Twice in a month?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I predict a lot of things, but I never predict the future. If you don't win there, would you be amenable to moving and running in another seat across the country?
At the end, yes, at the invitation of the local Greens, because we do not parachute in candidates. That's something that the other parties do, and you're never going to see from the Greens. So if I run somewhere else in the country, and I absolutely would, it has to be because I'm invited to do so by the local community, a place that I'm planning to make my home.
All right, I know you got to talk to the Prime Minister in about 10 minutes. I'll give you 10 seconds. What is the one key ask as the vote from the speech from the throne is happening? What is the big ask you will have for the Prime Minister when you speak to him on the phone in a couple minutes?
To show the political courage and leadership that we need at this time, both to complete our social safety net and also to tackle the climate emergency and meet our international obligations on behalf of the future.
Green Party leader Annamie Paul, what a pleasure to have you on the program, and I'm sure it's one of the first of many, many times. Thank you so much, and take good care. Congratulations on a big win.
Thank you so much. Take care.